Well, the countdown is finally over. Game week is here. College football kicks off all across the country, and Auburn will be in the friendly confines of Jordan-Hare Stadium for the first 5 weeks of the season, beginning with Alabama A&M on Saturday. Kickoff set for 6:30 on the Plains. He's Cole Cubelic. I'm Simone Eli. This is Head to Head. Let's go in. Welcome back, everybody, for another season of Auburn football head-to-head. Cole Cubelic, Simone Eli joining you to break down all of the matchups. Cole, it seems like it kind of flies by. Well, for a minute, it seems like it's lagging. Then the season's here. Then we all feel like we're rushing to get to kickoff, and time's up.
I think it's going to be more people that are more interested to see actual football, Simone, the first couple weeks of this season, because college football has almost entered into the NFL model where we have news every day year round, and some of that isn't necessarily good. Some's not positive, but it's sort of where we are. And I know a lot of it wasn't intentional, but I mean, Greg McElroy and I do a radio show in Birmingham. We've talked about it the last two off seasons, how insane it's been, just the amount of news on a daily basis. It's never like this. It's usually top 5 lists or what if this guy went here or greatest coaches of all time. We haven't had to do any of that the last two off seasons because it's just been jam packed.
Yeah, it really has. Of course, the transfer portal situation ramping up, NIL, just seeing guys in and out of programs. It's really also hard to keep track of rosters and who's where. And I mean, I think I was watching Florida State lose, and I mean, there were guys I was like, well, when did he get over there? I didn't even realize was happening last weekend in Poland or wherever the heck they were playing. And I was like, what is this college football? The landscape is ever changing. And as we know, we'll see that on an even bigger level later in the season with the change in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. 12 teams going to be in now. No divisions in the SEC. We have expansion in the SEC as well. Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league. That Oklahoma game at Auburn is going to be absolutely massive a couple weeks into the season. So there are so many things to be excited about, but also there's so many things that we need to learn. We're going to have to retrain our brains on so many different things, like 10-2, 9-3 might not be that bad anymore. And, you know, if you don't go to your conference championship game, but you're a 10-11 win team, that actually might be of benefit now because we don't know what's going to happen to conference title game losers. We usually just throw those out to like the Cheez-It Bowl or something. So are they still going to be in the playoff? How far down in the rankings are they going to go? There's so many unknowns in this season, and we didn't even start talking about different players in different places. It's going to be fun to watch. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it really is. Definitely increasing the parity in college football and the interest as well. It's going to be very fun to watch. And when you talk about the Auburn Tigers, when you think about things that you really, lots of unanswered questions, that's really the theme going into year 2 under Hugh Freeze. And he even alluded to that in his Monday press conference that he has going into each game, is that he doesn't really know what it's going to look like until you roll it out there. And you talk to coaches really at any level of football, whether it's flag football with, your son, or whether it's high school football with my husband, or the college football. It's like, you want to see it happen. You've seen it in practice. You've been concerned here and there. And when you finally roll it out there, let's just see what it looks like. And Coach Freeze said that on Monday. It might take a couple of weeks to really figure out what this is.
It's just, that's every year. I can tell you, starting year 2, year 3 at Auburn, that first game was always different just because there's a reacclimation process. And now I imagine that it's even more so because they're not in pads near as much as we were when I played football or even 5-10 years ago. So getting back out there, going full speed against somebody else that's going full speed, the rarity in which that actually takes place in today's college football has to make it more difficult. And then you throw in the transfer portal, so many new players on your roster, what the timing is going to be like, the rhythm, the continuity, the chemistry, the feel. You have to find out in a live game what that's going to be like. You can try and simulate it, but it's just never exactly the same. And that's why there's a lot about this Auburn team I'm excited about. I think there's reason to be excited and to have positive vibes about where Hugh Freeze's team is moving into this season.
Was there anything better, guys, than Cole Cubelic being positive going into the college football season? Like, this is great energy already. I mean, what more could we ask for? And I mean, listen, when you go into year 2 as a head coach, as a coaching staff, and we know there's a lot of changes with what Coach Freeze has done in the offseason and coordinators and guys coming in who are going to play key roles, even these young guys. And we'll talk about the receivers in a moment. But there's continuity and when similar language. And I think that we all know that Coach Freeze is going to have a heavier hand in the offense and what that looks like. But when you have a guy in Peyton Thorne who's back at starting quarterback position, who knows just what it's like to walk through the building and what it just feels like to be out there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. There's got to be positive in that, just in terms of continuity, bringing in key pieces on the outside that are going to be important, even when we still try to figure out what's going on up front. As you look at the offense, Cole, this is a position in a side of the ball that you're so familiar with. Where do you feel like Auburn is as they enter 2024?
Yeah, I want to go back to the beginning of what you said there, and it's year 2. I can vividly remember under Noel Mazzoni as our offensive coordinator when I was at Auburn, how much of a better grasp we had on everything year 2. Also, year 1, you're trying to just basically do with what you have. Yep. There were some bodies that Hugh Freeze had to keep around to just make sure they had guys to practice against. I do think going into year 2, a lot more of the turds have been run off, I guess we'll say. I don't know another way to put it.
That's right. But
so you've heard him talking this offseason about the guys care a little bit more. They seem to like each other a little bit more. Well, most guys in today's day of college football, if there's people they don't like on their team or coaches they don't like on the staff, they're just going to leave. And we didn't have that option, but now they do. So you can imagine that's going to be better. Now, fast forward into being into the system and guys just being around one another a little bit more, that's going to make things easier to grasp. That's going to give you different answers to different problems you're going to face, because it's not as complicated year 2 as it was year 1. Go to the positions that you referenced. Quarterback, Peyton Thorne's going to be back. The overall comfort level should be better for him. Walking around campus, walking around the facility, as you said, being around his teammates, he can assert himself a little bit more. That's the one thing that's been wild about the portal that I've always wondered is I can't imagine walking into a building with a bunch of dudes that had been there 2, 3, 4, 5, well, hell, now 7, 8 years for some guys. And acting like you sort of run the show and being a legitimate leader.
Dude, it's great.
It's pretty cool to see with certain teams that is available. And I think it's one thing that was available with this Auburn team. If you go to, say, Jaron Thompson at safety or Robert Lewis at receiver, my understanding is those guys have come in, asserted themselves, held other players at their positions accountable, been great communicators. So that tells you that Hugh Freeze had a space for not just talent, but leaders to come in and make an impact on this football team. That wide receiver room is going to be totally different. It underachieved last year. It wasn't good last year. They couldn't separate. They didn't make difficult catches. They didn't make life easier on Peyton Thorne. He has plenty of the blame to be taken here. I'm not excusing his performances, but his life was made more difficult by that receiver room a year ago. There's still going to be a run-first offense. Nobody's talking about Jarquez Hunter for whatever reason right now. I think he's the most proven back in the SEC going into this season. Connor Lew's not going to be a first-year starter at center. He's going to be back. You move Dylan Wade down to guard. Jeremiah Wright is ready to go. He is a legitimate glass eater at right guard. I think you have a little bit of an issue at left tackle that you still have to kind of work out. But if the run game's there, more attention is going to be paid to that, which it wasn't really last year. I'm excited about the offense. I think it has the opportunity to exceed expectations, and I think the quarterback will be a big part of that. He doesn't have to be Joe Burrow. He doesn't have to be Jaden Daniels or Bryce Young for Auburn's offense to be good. I think when you look at Peyton Thorne going out and just being someone who operates this offense at a high level and is consistent and understands where the ball is supposed to go, and my understanding is he's been able to have a lot more put on him from a decision-making standpoint this fall. That's where the offense is going to sort of go to the next level.
Let's talk about the other side of the ball now. I mean, I think that the biggest name that kind of entered space, I guess, for Auburn, so to speak, was DJ Durkin and what it was that he was going to bring to the Auburn football team. This is a guy who's a coach at a very high level. He's been a head coach at a high level as well. It seemed like during fall camp, when guys were asked about what he was bringing to the table, what he was bringing to practices, was an intensity and an energy that maybe didn't exist previously. What have you heard in that locker room, and where do you envision this side of the ball in terms of the veterans that are returning, the opportunity for guys that have come in now to make an impact early on?
Well, the first thing I can tell you about DJ Durkin, because I covered him at Florida, at Ole Miss, a couple of different stops, is his players love playing for him. And at Texas A&M, like, his guys will get after it. They understand the intensity that it takes to be a good defense. The other part is being multiple. Remember, DJ Durkin was forced by Lane Kiffin essentially to go learn the 3-3-5, because at that point in time, Lane thought that was the best advantage that they had to play successful defense. They weren't going to have enough big bodies, weren't going to be able to go up against other teams in the league. And it was probably a pretty good thought by Lane, but that wasn't what DJ ran. So now he brings a multitude of fronts that he has played or has been forced to play that he can throw at you. He was much more 4 down. at Texas A&M, but probably had the best defensive line in college football last year.
Yeah.
So you look at where he's been, what he's had to do, what he's been forced to do. I think being multiple is going to be a massive advantage for this Auburn defense. I think you have a couple of linebackers that are going to be active. My biggest question mark is just going to be up front. Do you have someone who can be a consistent disruptor along that defensive line? Philip Leedy comes in. He might end up being that guy. Don't know for sure if it's going to be him. Isaiah Rakes, who was with DJ at Texas A&M for a little while, understands exactly what that's going to be all about. He might end up being that guy. I think you have two edge rushers, but their size concerns me just a little bit. Like Jalen McLeod can get after the quarterback, but he's not a big physical guy. I love the Kieron Crawford kid that they got from Arkansas State. When I watch his film, his motor is 1,000 miles an hour all the time, but he's just not super stout. Keldrick Faulk can be that guy on the edge that's a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, but you have downhill linebackers and like an Austin Keys. You have side-to-side linebackers in the Eugene Asante. So the numbers at linebacker and the disruptors up front are kind of my biggest question marks. But I love the fact that DJ is going to be able to do different things on a week-in, week-out basis. I think the secondary will play out and be fine. I feel pretty good about that group. I just want to see what it looks like first and foremost, because I don't have a real great feel for exactly how he's going to want to live each and every week.
Yeah, let's talk about Saturday. And it's going to be the first of 5 home games for Auburn, which I don't know who scheduled that, if the cards just turned out right after everything with the scramble with the SEC. But kudos to them, because if there's a year to do it and a year that you want to have a few games under your belt to get comfortable before you're going to kick off conference play, you can do it at home. This is going to be it. I mean, you're year 2 for Hugh Freeze. You feel like, Auburn is so hard to play. And that was one thing I don't want to not mention, by the way. During SEC media days, a lot of kids, I shouldn't say kids, student athletes were asked about where the best place to play is in the SEC. So many folks mentioned Auburn. I feel that when I'm on the field. I mean, it's intimidating, it's exciting, it's fun. People were asked, which one's more intimidating, exciting? Bryant Denny, Jordan Hare, and across the board. I don't know who was doing this story. It was kind of great though. It was Jordan Hare, and I mean, you've been there. I mean, once or twice. Like you have to believe that there's going to be a huge advantage to starting the season in 3 non-conference games at home, and what that can do for this team and its confidence.
I've had multiple quarterbacks. See, for me, it's a little bit different because that was something that we fed off of, and it never felt that way to us. But Trevor Knight, who was at A&M, McElroy, who's at Alabama, Aaron Murray, they've all told me that if it's not the difficult, it's one of the most difficult and vastly underrated at how difficult it is to go to Jordan Hare Stadium and win a game. To be able to have that comfort of being at home the first month of the season. Now, they'll pay for it as well, because come October the 5th, they don't come back home until November the 2nd. So you almost have a full month away from Jordan Hare Stadium also. But especially with the first SEC game in Arkansas being at home, that's massive. And that Oklahoma game is going to be monumental. First road SEC game for Oklahoma. They'll be coming off that Tennessee game, which I've had some Oklahoma fans and people in the media that cover that team say that could be the biggest regular season game in Sooner football history, which even if it's in that league, in that category, we're talking about a massive game, and Auburn gets to catch them coming off that. So it gives you a real opportunity to get off to a great start, to gain a ton of confidence, and use that fan base that is so passionate, that makes life difficult on so many other opponents, to sort of get ahead of the curve before you get into a little bit more of the meat of the schedule.
Yeah, well, what do you want to see? Let's as we enter really Alabama A&M, what do you want to see from this team? And how much do you think that Hugh Freeze shows? I mean, that they're going to be able to open it up a little bit. We've talked about that for the last 15 minutes. But what do you do in these first 3 games, non-conference, at home, that's going to excite your fan base, excite the recruiting trail, and guys that you want to be bring in and show, hey, we're going to be dynamic, we're going to open up the playbook, while also not saying this is everything that we have by week 4.
The good news is, because of how that offense is run, Simone, you can run a lot of it, but not show all of it. Because there are going to be options and different answers for how different things are played that you may not necessarily take advantage of. I loved Coach Freeze this week talking about this topic and then saying, these receivers haven't been in this uniform. A lot of them haven't been in this stadium to play a game or played in the SEC. Like, we need to give those guys opportunities. We need to allow them to go out and show us what they're capable of. We need to go out and try to build their confidence. So don't be surprised if Peyton Thorne, or possibly a different quarterback even later in the game, is still pushing the ball down the field. and allowing these receivers to get more comfortable, to gain some confidence, to make a few plays, just because it's so new to so many of them. Maybe not the actual football part, but the football at Auburn, in an Auburn uniform, in that stadium, around each other. I think he wants to go out and see what he's got on his hands. To me, it's always just about going out and operating the offense. Going out and just making sure you take care of your fundamentals, you get lined up on time, decision-making by the quarterback, getting it in and out of the mesh, getting a football out on time. If you need to throw it away, live for the next play. Don't waste time, and don't go out there look hesitant or look indecisive. And then defensively, it's pretty easy. Alignment, assignment, effort. Those are the three things that I always start with that I want to see from a group. Are you lined up correctly? Are you allowing your opponent to steal yards? Do you know what your assignment is, how to fit a run, where to be in coverage, and just are you flying around? I think if you get those three things from this Auburn defense, it's going to be a bit of a physical outmatch for and Alabama A&M is pretty big offensive line. They're pretty physical. You got quarterback, running back, receiver that all have a chance to be all conference returning, but still they should be able to dominate the line of scrimmage. And that's what I'm looking most for, is to see which one of those individuals up front on that defensive line stands out and maybe can become that disruptor later on in the season that we referenced earlier in the show.
Later in the season, a lot more exciting predictions to come. Where do you feel like this one's going to end up on the scoreboard when we hit 0-0?
I think this is going to be 42-14. Like I said, you've got Cornelius Brown back at quarterback, Donovan English back at tailback, Jacoby Wright at wide receiver. Alabama A&M has a little continuity and some feel, some guys that have played football together. Won't be surprised if they hit a few down the field, especially with the new defensive coordinator and some new players on that side of the ball. But I think the Auburn offense gets going too, and I think there'll be way too much to handle physically. They'll outmatch the Bulldogs in the trenches on both sides, and I think Auburn gets a comfortable win.
Like it. I'm similar. I had 35-7, so we'll see how it goes, guys. A 6:30 kickoff at Jordan-Hare Stadium. We appreciate you tuning into the first edition, so to speak, of Head to Head as Week 1 kicks off all throughout the country, including here in the SEC. Looking forward to it every week here with Cole Cubelic. For Cole, I'm Simone. We will see you for Week 2.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.